Life is very simple. What we give out, we get back. When I say that, I'm not offering a slogan. I'm inviting you into a way of living that gently hands your power back to you. Today, I want to begin by reminding you of something very important. You are not here to wait. You are not here to hope that happiness will someday arrive if other people change, if circumstances improve, or if life finally decides to be kinder. You are here to participate. You are here to choose. And you are here to call your happiness by name, the same way you would call a dear friend you trust to come sit beside you. So let's start right there, with the understanding that you are not a victim of your days. You are the one living them. When you stop waiting and begin calling, something inside you shifts from helplessness into authorship, and that shift alone can soften years of disappointment. You may have been taught to believe that happiness is a reward, something that comes after hard work, after suffering, after proving yourself worthy. But that belief quietly keeps you powerless. The truth is much kinder. Happiness begins the moment you decide you are allowed to feel good now, even while things are still unfolding. And that decision does not ignore reality. It changes how you meet it. I want you to notice how often you've been told, directly or indirectly, to wait. Wait until things settle down. Wait until you feel safer. Wait until you're thinner, richer, loved, understood. Yet waiting has never healed a heart. Waiting has never brought peace. Waiting simply postpones life. When you call happiness by name, you move out of waiting mode and into living mode. You stop asking life for permission and start responding to it with intention. This doesn't mean you deny pain or pretend everything is perfect. It means you choose not to hand your emotional authority over to conditions you cannot control. And that is where real power begins. The moment you say, quietly but clearly, I choose how I feel today, you reclaim something precious that may have been missing for a long time, your sense of inner leadership. Now let's talk about mornings, because mornings matter more than most people realize. The morning is not just the start of a day, it is the doorway into your mental and emotional climate. When you wake up, your mind is still soft, still open, still impressionable. This is not an accident, it is an opportunity. If the first thing you do is reach for worry, review problems, or brace yourself for stress, you are programming your entire nervous system to stay on alert. But if you decide, even before you get out of bed, how you want to feel, you send a very different message to your body and to your mind. You are saying, I am choosing my inner weather before the world speaks to me. That choice doesn't require effort, it requires presence. Many people think happiness is something that happens after the day goes well. I see it the other way around. When you choose your emotional tone in the morning, your day tends to respond to that choice. Not because life obeys you like a servant, but because your perception changes, your reactions soften, and your responses become wiser. A calm morning decision can turn a chaotic day into a manageable one. A gentle intention can interrupt old patterns of tension before they fully form. This is not about controlling outcomes. It is about choosing how you show up. And when you show up with intention, life meets you differently. This is why I encourage you not to leave your feelings up for negotiation. Decide them early. Decide them kindly. Decide them consciously. You might say, today I choose ease, or today I choose clarity, or today I choose patience with myself. These are not empty words. They are instructions to your inner world, and your inner world is always listening. Over time, these small morning choices accumulate into a stable sense of well-being that doesn't collapse at the first inconvenience. That stability is what many people call happiness, though it is really something deeper, emotional self-trust. Now, let's gently clarify what it means to call your happiness by name. This is where many people get stuck without realizing it. They say they want happiness, but they don't know what that actually means for them. I want to be happy is too vague for the mind to work with. The subconscious needs clarity. It responds to specifics. When you call happiness by name, you are not asking for a concept. You are naming an experience. You are saying, this is how I want to feel in my body. This is the quality of energy I choose to live in. Maybe for you, happiness feels like calm. Maybe it feels like lightness. Maybe it feels like connection or safety or quiet confidence. There is no right answer. There is only your answer. When you take a moment to name your happiness clearly, you remove confusion from the process. Confusion is exhausting. It keeps people disappointed because they don't recognize happiness when it shows up in a form they didn't expect. But when you know what you are calling in, you can meet it, you can notice it, you can nourish it. You stop overlooking the very thing you asked for. This is an act of self-respect. It says, my inner experience matters enough for me to define it. And once you define it, you begin to live in alignment with it, often without forcing anything at all. I also want to gently correct another misunderstanding. Happiness is not something that floats down randomly on good days and disappears on bad ones. It is not luck. It is not personality. And it is certainly not reserved for people with easier lives. Happiness, as I understand it, is a discipline, not a harsh one, not a punishing one, but a loving discipline. It is the discipline of choosing again when your mind wants to complain, choosing again when old habits pull you toward dissatisfaction, choosing again when the day doesn't go the way you planned. This kind of discipline is not rigid. It is responsive. It says, I am willing to return to myself. People often confuse discipline with restriction, but emotional discipline is actually a form of freedom. It frees you from being dragged around by every mood, every trigger, every external event. When you practice choosing your emotional state regularly, you create inner consistency. That consistency becomes a safe place inside you, one you can return to again and again. And from that place, happiness becomes less dramatic, but far more reliable. It is no longer something you chase, it is something you practice. This also means letting go of the belief that happiness depends on perfect conditions. Life will always include contrast. There will always be moments of challenge, loss, and uncertainty. Happiness does not disappear because these moments exist. It simply changes shape. When you understand happiness as an inner discipline, you stop asking life to be flawless before you allow yourself to feel good. You give yourself permission to experience joy alongside imperfection, and that permission is profoundly healing. As you begin to live this way, you may notice resistance arise. Old beliefs don't always leave quietly. You might hear thoughts like, "I don't deserve this yet," or "This won't last," or "I should wait until things improve." When that happens, don't argue with yourself. Just return to your choice. Say gently, "I am allowed to feel good now." You don't need to justify it. You don't need approval. You only need willingness. This is where everything starts to change, not all at once, but steadily. When you stop waiting and start calling, when you decide instead of hoping, when you practice instead of postponing, you step into a different relationship with life. And from here, something very interesting begins to unfold. Because once you understand happiness as a choice and a discipline, you naturally start to notice how your thoughts, your body, and your relationships respond to that choice in ways you may not have expected. And that is where we'll gently continue next. You know, one of the most gentle shifts that happens when you finally name what you want is this. You stop walking past your own happiness without recognizing it. For so long, many of us move through life feeling vaguely dissatisfied, not because happiness isn't present, but because we don't know what we're actually looking for. When you give happiness a name, something very practical happens inside you. Your awareness sharpens, your attention becomes kinder. You begin to notice moments that would have slipped by before. A quiet morning, a sincere conversation, a sense of ease in your body. These moments were always there, but without a name, they didn't register as nourishment. Naming creates recognition, and recognition creates appreciation. And appreciation is one of the fastest ways to let happiness grow. When you know what you want to feel, your actions start to reorganize themselves naturally. You don't have to force discipline or create rigid plans. You simply begin choosing differently. If you've named your happiness as peace, you may find yourself stepping away from unnecessary arguments. If you've named it as connection, you may return a phone call you've been avoiding. If you've named it as lightness, you might stop filling every moment with obligation. These are not dramatic changes, but they are honest ones. Happiness doesn't usually arrive with fireworks. It arrives with alignment. And alignment feels like relief. It feels like things finally make sense in your body. What I love about this process is that it removes the fear of missing out. When you don't know what you want, you're always afraid that happiness is somewhere else, happening to someone else at another time. But once you've named it, you recognize it when it shows up in simple forms. You don't overlook it anymore. You don't dismiss it as not enough. You don't postpone joy, waiting for a bigger version. You let yourself receive what is already here. And that changes your relationship with life from chasing to welcoming. This is where thinking and action gently meet. Your thoughts stop being wishes and your actions stop being random. They begin to cooperate. You might notice that you say yes more consciously. and no more lovingly. You stop overcommitting in ways that drain you. You stop betraying yourself in small moments. And none of this requires you to become a different person. It simply requires you to listen to yourself with respect. When you do that, happiness is no longer something you hope for. It becomes something you participate in. Now, I want to soften something else that often weighs on people's hearts. Many of us believe that happiness requires a complete life overhaul. We imagine that unless we change everything, our job, our body, our relationships, our location, we're not allowed to feel good yet. That belief creates enormous pressure, and pressure is not a fertile ground for joy. Happiness doesn't ask you to rebuild your entire life. It asks you to take one small step in the direction of kindness. One choice that feels more honest than the last. One moment where you choose yourself without guilt. Small actions matter more than grand gestures because they are sustainable. A small action doesn't overwhelm your nervous system. It doesn't demand perfection. It simply says, I'm willing to care. Maybe that action is going to bed a little earlier. Maybe it's drinking more water. Maybe it's stepping outside for 5 minutes of fresh air. These choices may seem ordinary, but they are deeply relational. They are how you build trust with yourself. And self-trust is one of the quiet foundations of happiness. When you build happiness through small, consistent choices, you stop waiting for motivation to appear. You don't need to feel inspired to act kindly toward yourself. You act kindly, and inspiration follows. This reverses an old pattern many people live by, where they wait to feel better before they do better. In reality, doing better gently, imperfectly, often leads to feeling better. Happiness grows through participation, not through pressure. It's also important to remember that happiness is not created in isolation. We are not designed to thrive alone, no matter how independent we think we should be. Connection is not a weakness. It is a biological and emotional need. When our connections are nourishing, our bodies relax, our minds soften, our immune systems respond. This is not poetic language. It is lived experience. Healthy relationships don't mean perfect relationships. They mean honest ones. They mean spaces where you can be seen without performing, heard without defending, and supported without being controlled. When you allow yourself to cultivate these kinds of connections, whether with friends, family, partners, or community, you are actively supporting your happiness. You are giving your nervous system evidence that it is safe to be here, safe to be yourself, safe to feel good. If you've been trying to be happy all on your own, I want to gently invite you to question that strategy. Independence is valuable, but isolation is not healing. You don't need to carry everything by yourself to be strong. Strength also looks like reaching out, listening, sharing, and receiving. Sometimes happiness enters your life through another person's presence, through laughter shared, through quiet understanding. And when you open yourself to connection, you also become a source of happiness for others. This mutual exchange is deeply fulfilling. Relationships, when approached with self-awareness, become mirrors that help us grow. They show us where we are generous, where we are guarded, where we are afraid, and where we are capable of love. Instead of seeing relationships as obstacles to happiness, we can see them as teachers. Each interaction gives us an opportunity to choose kindness over defensiveness, curiosity over judgment, love over fear. These choices, repeated over time, create a sense of inner richness that no external achievement can replace. It's also worth saying that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you treat yourself with respect, you naturally gravitate toward people who reflect that respect. When you honor your needs, you stop tolerating connections that diminish you. Happiness in relationships doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from showing up as yourself and allowing others to do the same. This creates authenticity, and authenticity is deeply satisfying. As you move through this process, naming your happiness, acting in small ways, and nurturing connection, you may notice moments of discomfort. Old habits don't dissolve overnight. There may be days when you forget, when you slip back into waiting, when you doubt yourself. That's okay. Happiness is not fragile. It doesn't disappear because you had a difficult day. Each moment offers a new choice. Each breath offers a new beginning. You don't need to be consistent to be worthy. You only need to be willing to return. So if you take anything with you from this part, let it be this gentle truth. Happiness is not a destination you arrive at once you've done everything right. It is a relationship you build day by day through clarity, kindness, and connection. And as you continue to explore this relationship, you'll begin to see how deeply it influences not just how you feel, but how you live, how you relate, and how you allow life to meet you. And from here, there is still more to unfold, because once happiness becomes something you recognize, choose, and practice, it begins to shape your entire experience in ways that are both subtle and profound. I want to share something very gentle with you, something I've learned over the years by watching people heal, watching bodies respond, and watching hearts soften when they finally feel safe. For a long time, many of us believed that happiness lived only in our thoughts, as if it were a mood we could talk ourselves into. But life has been patiently showing us something deeper. Our relationships are not just emotional experiences, they are biological events. Every safe connection you have sends signals to your brain that say, "You can rest now." And every signal of safety gives your nervous system permission to repair, renew, and rebalance. This is not philosophy. This is how you were designed. When you feel securely connected, your brain slows its stress responses, your body conserves energy, and your mind becomes more flexible. You think more clearly. You remember more easily. You feel more present. Happiness, in this sense, is not something extra you add to life. It is a condition that allows life to function well. I've seen this again and again. When people feel seen, heard, and emotionally held, their bodies behave differently. Their breathing deepens. Their shoulders drop. Their thoughts stop racing. Science now confirms what many of us have felt intuitively for a long time. Safe relationships protect the brain. They slow cognitive decline. They support memory. They help regulate emotions as we age. Loneliness, on the other hand, does the opposite. It keeps the brain in a low-level survival mode, and survival mode is not where joy lives. Survival mode is exhausting. Over time, it wears the system down. That's why happiness is not just a feeling you chase. It is a state your body needs. What breaks my heart a little is how often people blame themselves for feeling unhappy when what they are really experiencing is a lack of emotional safety. They think something is wrong with them, when in truth, their nervous system has simply been without nourishment. We were not meant to live disconnected lives. Even the most independent among us still need resonance, warmth, and attunement. You don't need dozens of people. You need authenticity. One or two connections where you don't have to brace yourself can change everything. When your brain senses that kind of safety, it shifts out of defense and into growth. And growth feels like hope. This is why happiness cannot be separated from the quality of your relationships. You may have achievements, comfort, and external success, but without emotional connection, the brain interprets life as incomplete. And when life feels incomplete, the mind looks for problems to solve. That problem-solving loop can turn into anxiety, restlessness, or a vague sense that something is missing. The body isn't broken. It's asking for connection. And once you understand that, you stop judging yourself and start listening more compassionately. Now, I want to gently bring your attention to something we don't always like to look at: chronic stress. Stress doesn't usually announce itself loudly. It sneaks in quietly. It disguises itself as responsibility, productivity, or endurance. But chronic stress has a very specific effect. It slowly numbs your capacity for pleasure. It doesn't take joy away all at once. It just makes it harder to access. Over time, people forget what happiness feels like, not because it's gone, but because their system has been overloaded for too long. And here's something important to understand. Stress doesn't only come from being alone. It can also come from being in the wrong relationships. Relationships that require you to constantly explain yourself. Relationships where you feel criticized, dismissed, or emotionally unsafe. Your body does not distinguish between physical danger and emotional threat. It responds to both with the same stress chemistry. So even if you are surrounded by people, if those connections are draining, your system remains on high alert. And happiness cannot bloom in an environment of constant vigilance. This is why emotional safety is not a luxury. It is a requirement. Happiness needs a place to land. It needs an inner and outer environment where it is allowed to stay. If you are constantly managing tension, walking on eggshells, or suppressing your truth to keep the peace, your nervous system never fully relaxes. And without relaxation, joy becomes fleeting. It visits briefly and leaves quickly. That's not because you are doing something wrong. It's because your system hasn't been given permission to rest. I want you to hear this clearly, without judgment. Not every relationship is good for your happiness, even if it looks acceptable on the surface. Some connections drain energy rather than replenish it. Some keep old wounds active instead of allowing them to heal. Recognizing this is not about blaming anyone. It is about awareness. Awareness gives you choice, and choice restores power. When you see where your energy leaks are, you can begin to gently redirect yourself toward what supports you. This doesn't mean cutting people off harshly or making dramatic decisions overnight. Happiness doesn't require drama. It requires honesty. You might start by noticing how you feel in your body after certain interactions. Do you feel calmer or more tense? More open or more closed? More like yourself or less? Your body gives you constant feedback. Learning to listen to it is one of the most loving things you can do. When you honor that feedback, you create the conditions for happiness to return naturally. Chronic stress also comes from internal relationships, not just external ones. The way you speak to yourself matters. A harsh inner dialogue keeps your system in a state of threat, even when nothing dangerous is happening. If your mind is constantly criticizing, rushing, or warning you, your brain never receives the signal that it is safe. Happiness struggles in that environment. But when your inner voice becomes kinder, your nervous system responds almost immediately. It softens, it opens, it becomes more receptive to joy. What I want you to understand is that happiness is not fragile. It doesn't disappear because you've been stressed or lonely. It simply waits for safety. The moment safety begins to return, happiness follows. And safety can be built. It can be practiced. It can be chosen, one small step at a time. You don't have to fix your entire life. You only need to begin creating environments, internal and external, where your system feels less threatened. So as you reflect on your own life, I invite you to do so gently. Ask yourself where you feel most at ease. Ask yourself which connections nourish you and which ones exhaust you. Ask yourself how much chronic stress you've been carrying without realizing it. These questions are not meant to overwhelm you. They are meant to bring clarity, and clarity is deeply empowering. When you see clearly, you can choose differently. Happiness is not just about feeling good. It is about feeling safe enough to feel anything at all. It is about giving your brain and your body permission to come out of survival and into presence. And once that happens, joy doesn't have to be forced. It arises naturally, quietly, and steadily. From here, we can begin to talk about how to consciously create that safety, how to choose environments that support you, and how to build a relationship with happiness that lasts. And that is where our journey continues. And as we move gently from what drains us into what truly nourishes us, something very important begins to come into focus. I want you to hear this without fear, without guilt, and without pressure. Choosing happiness often means choosing differently in our relationships. Not because anyone is wrong, not because anyone has failed, but because you are allowed to grow. There was a time when certain connections helped you survive. They may have given you familiarity, distraction, or a sense of belonging when you didn't yet know how to give those things to yourself. And I honor that, truly. But survival is not the same as thriving. And there comes a moment, quiet, honest, undeniable, when your body whispers, "This is costing me too much." When you begin to listen to that whisper, you are not becoming selfish. You are becoming truthful. And truth is always loving, even when it feels uncomfortable at first. You do not need to keep everyone in your life in order to prove that you are kind, spiritual, or evolved. Love does not demand exhaustion. Love does not require you to abandon yourself. I've watched so many people confuse endurance with compassion, and it breaks my heart a little every time. You can care deeply about someone and still recognize that the connection no longer supports your well-being. Letting go of a relationship that leaves you depleted is not rejection. It is self-respect. And self-respect is one of the highest forms of love. When you release what drains you, you are not creating emptiness, you are creating space. And space is where happiness has room to enter. There is a gentle maturity that comes when you stop asking, "How do I keep everyone?" and begin asking, "What allows me to stay whole?" This is not a harsh sorting of people into good and bad. Life is more compassionate than that. It is simply an acknowledgement of resonance. Some relationships resonate with who you were, others resonate with who you are becoming, and some no longer resonate at all. You don't have to explain this to everyone. You don't have to justify it. Your nervous system already knows the truth. When you choose relationships that feel safe, reciprocal, and kind, your body responds immediately. You breathe more easily, you think more clearly, you laugh without effort. Happiness doesn't have to fight for attention anymore. It feels welcomed. Now, let me gently shift us into something equally empowering. Happiness is not a personality trait that some people are born with and others are denied. It is a state your brain can learn. This is one of the most hopeful things I know. Your mind is not fixed. It is responsive. It changes with repetition. Just as worry can become a habit, so can contentment. Just as criticism can feel automatic, so can kindness, especially toward yourself. Every time you consciously choose happiness, even in a small way, you are training your brain to recognize that state as familiar and safe. And what is familiar eventually becomes default. You don't have to feel happy all day to practice happiness. That idea alone has caused so much unnecessary pressure. Happiness is not about forcing a smile over pain. It is about choosing where you return when the moment passes. Think of it as a home base. Each time you name what you want to feel, peace, ease, warmth, connection, you activate a pattern in the brain. You are literally creating a pathway. At first, it may feel awkward or intentional. That's normal. New pathways always do. But the brain loves efficiency. The more often you walk a path, the easier it becomes to access. Over time, happiness stops feeling like an effort and starts feeling like a natural place to land. This is why I so often encourage people to speak their intentions aloud. When you name your happiness each morning, you are giving your mind a direction. You are saying, "This is where we're going today." The brain responds beautifully to clarity. It begins to filter experiences differently. It notices opportunities that align with the emotional state you've chosen. It guides your behavior subtly, how you speak, what you tolerate, what you reach for. Happiness doesn't suddenly fall into your lap. It begins to shape your choices from the inside out. And here is something I want you to be very gentle with. Setbacks do not erase progress. If you have a day where you feel heavy, disconnected, or discouraged, it does not mean you failed at happiness. It simply means you are human. The practice is not about never leaving happiness. It is about knowing how to return. Each return strengthens the pathway. Each return builds trust within yourself. Over time, that trust becomes stability, and stability is deeply comforting to the nervous system. You see, happiness is not a peak experience meant to be chased. It is a baseline that can be restored. When your relationships support you and your inner dialogue softens, happiness no longer feels fragile. It becomes resilient. It can coexist with challenges. It can sit beside sadness without disappearing. That's when happiness stops being conditional. It doesn't depend on perfect circumstances anymore. It depends on presence, choice, and self-attunement. I want you to imagine what it would feel like if happiness were no longer something you hoped for someday, but something you practiced gently each day. Not in grand gestures, but in small permissions. Permission to rest, permission to say no, permission to choose connection over obligation, permission to notice what feels good without apologizing for it. These permissions accumulate. They shape your inner world, and your inner world always leads the way. So as you move forward, remember this: choosing happiness is not about cutting yourself off from life. It is about aligning yourself with life. It is about choosing relationships that nourish, thoughts that support, and habits that remind your body it is safe to feel good. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Happiness stops being a decision you have to make and starts becoming the way you live. You are not late. You are not behind. Your brain is capable of change at any age, at any stage. Each time you name your happiness, you reinforce the truth that joy belongs to you. Each time you choose nourishment over depletion, you affirm your worth. And little by little, happiness stops feeling like something you reach for and starts feeling like something that has been waiting for you all along. There is something I want to say to you very softly, almost as if I were leaning in so only you could hear it, because this is where many people tighten instead of relax. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to feel joy without earning it, without explaining it, without justifying it to anyone at all. I know how unfamiliar that can sound. So many of us were taught quietly, indirectly, that joy must be deserved, that happiness comes only after suffering, that feeling good too soon might invite loss or punishment. And without realizing it, we begin to police our own joy. We wait. We postpone. We tell ourselves, not yet, later, when everything is resolved, and life waits patiently while we deny ourselves the very nourishment we need most. I've watched people carry an invisible guilt around happiness as if joy were something indulgent or irresponsible. They relax for a moment, laugh freely, feel light, and then a voice appears inside saying, "You shouldn't feel this good." That voice is not truth. That voice is conditioning. It is an old habit of withholding love from yourself. And I want you to know this with absolute clarity. You do not need a reason to feel good. Joy is not a reward. Joy is a natural state when resistance softens. When you stop arguing with life, happiness rises on its own. Sometimes people say to me, "But Louise, if I let myself be happy now, won't I stop growing?" And I smile, because growth does not come from deprivation. Growth comes from nourishment. A starved system cannot expand. A tense body cannot heal. A guarded heart cannot open. Joy does not make you complacent. It makes you available. When you allow happiness, even in small moments, you tell your nervous system it is safe to be alive. And that safety becomes the foundation for every positive change that follows. One of the deepest wounds many of us carry is the belief that happiness must be earned through struggle. That belief keeps us trapped in cycles of proving, pushing, and postponing. We confuse worth with effort. We think rest must follow exhaustion, not precede it. But life does not work that way. The universe does not measure you by how much you endure. It responds to how open you are to receiving. And receiving begins when you stop saying no to joy. I want you to notice how often you delay your happiness. I'll be happy when the work is done. I'll relax when everything is settled. I'll enjoy myself when I've fixed this part of me. That future moment keeps moving, doesn't it? And meanwhile, the present passes quietly, waiting for your permission. Happiness does not live in the future. It lives in allowance. The moment you allow yourself to feel even a little better, you begin to dissolve the belief that suffering is required. This is where language becomes so important. The words you use with yourself shape what your body believes is possible. When you name happiness deliberately, you are not pretending. You are directing your attention. Attention is creative. What you give attention to grows stronger. When you say, "Today I choose my happiness," you are not denying challenges. You are choosing your orientation. You are deciding which inner space you will return to again and again. Affirmations are not commands you bark at yourself. They are invitations you repeat until your system recognizes them as safe. The subconscious mind listens constantly. It responds to tone, rhythm, repetition. When you speak gently and consistently, something begins to soften. Old defenses loosen. New possibilities feel less threatening. Happiness stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling familiar. I encourage you to slow down as you hear these words, not rushing to believe them, not forcing yourself to agree, just allowing them to land. You don't have to convince yourself. You only have to be willing. Willingness opens doors that effort cannot. Willingness says, "I don't know exactly how this will unfold, but I am open to feeling better," and life responds beautifully to that openness. Many people think affirmations work only if you feel joyful when you say them. That is not true. They work because you say them. Repetition builds pathways. Pathways create habits. Habits become states. At first, happiness may feel like a visitor. Over time, it becomes a resident, and eventually, it feels like home. So let us practice together, slowly, without pressure. Let the words arrive at their own pace. Let your body hear them. Let your breath carry them. There is no rush. There is nowhere else you need to be. Today, I choose my happiness. Notice how it feels to say that, not as a demand, but as a choice, a gentle one, a personal one. I clearly name what joy means to me today. Not what it should mean, not what it meant yesterday, just today. Perhaps it is ease, perhaps it is clarity, perhaps it is warmth or lightness or simple peace. It is safe for me to be happy. This is an important one. Safety is what allows joy to stay. Without safety, happiness feels temporary. With safety, it settles in. I allow happiness to find me easily. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to track it down. Allowing is enough. Happiness responds when I call it by name, because clarity invites response. When you know what you are available for, life meets you there. Let these words move through you like a soft current. There is nothing you need to fix in order for them to work. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not missing anything essential. You are learning to receive what has always been available. If guilt arises when you feel good, greet it kindly. Guilt is just an old protector that learned the wrong lesson. Thank it for trying to keep you safe, and gently choose joy anyway. You are allowed to outgrow your defenses. You are allowed to update your beliefs. Happiness does not need to be dramatic to be real. It often arrives quietly, in moments of presence, in the feeling of being okay right now. Those moments matter. They accumulate. They teach your system that life is not something to endure, but something to experience. And as you practice naming happiness, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Your choices begin to align. You speak differently. You listen differently. You tolerate less of what drains you and invite more of what supports you. Happiness stops being an abstract idea and becomes a living practice. You do not need permission from the past to enjoy the present. You do not need approval from others to feel good inside. You are worthy of joy simply because you exist. Let that truth settle where it needs to. So today, and tomorrow, and the day after that, keep calling your happiness by name, not loudly, not desperately, just consistently. Life is listening, and it has been waiting very patiently for you to say yes. Let us imagine this together, just for a moment, before the day has even begun. Imagine that you wake up, and for once, you do not rush. You do not reach for the phone. You do not mentally list what could go wrong. You stay right where you are, still wrapped in the quiet of the morning, and you remember something very important. This day has not yet been shaped. It is open. It is listening, and you are allowed to speak first. This is what I like to call an invitation, not a demand, not a task, but a loving invitation to happiness. When you begin your day this way, you are not reacting to life, you are greeting it. And life responds very differently when it feels welcomed instead of challenged. So you take one gentle breath in, not forcing it, just allowing it. And as you breathe out, you let your body know that it does not need to brace itself today. Already something softens. Already your nervous system hears the message. We are not in danger. And from that place, you begin to call happiness by name, not in a vague way, not as a wish, but as a recognition. You say quietly, maybe only in your heart, my happiness today is peace. And your body responds by releasing a little tension you didn't even realize you were holding. Then you add, my happiness today is energy. Not frantic energy, not pressure-driven energy, but a steady aliveness that supports you. And perhaps you add, my happiness today is connection. Connection to yourself, to one person, to life itself. As you name these, you are not asking for miracles. You are setting orientation. You are telling your mind and your body what matters today. What many people don't realize is that the brain loves direction. When you name what you are available for, your perception adjusts. You begin to notice opportunities that match what you called in. You act differently without trying. You speak a little more kindly. You pause instead of rushing. You choose actions that are aligned instead of automatic. This is not effort. This is coherence. Happiness becomes a guide, not a goal. And because it is gentle, it does not exhaust you. It supports you. There is a quiet power in committing to act in alignment with what you named. Not perfectly, not all day, just sincerely. If you named peace, you may choose not to argue with that thought that tries to upset you. If you named energy, you may choose to nourish your body instead of depleting it. If you named connection, you may reach out, or you may simply stay present with yourself. These are small choices, almost invisible, yet they shape the entire tone of the day. Happiness does not need grand gestures. It needs consistency and permission. As the day unfolds, life will still be life. There may be surprises, interruptions, even moments of discomfort. This does not cancel your happiness. Happiness is not fragile like that. It bends. It adapts. It waits for you to return. And each time you remember what you named in the morning, you reinforce the pathway. You remind yourself, I chose this. That reminder alone is deeply empowering. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are in relationship with them. Now let us gently move into the evening, because happiness loves completion. Before you fall asleep, when the noise of the day has softened, you give yourself a moment of acknowledgement, not evaluation, not judgment, just recognition. You look back, not searching for perfection, but for evidence. Evidence that happiness came when you called it. Maybe it arrived as a quiet moment of relief. Maybe it showed up as a smile, a kind word, a pause that changed the course of a stressful moment. Maybe it was something so small you almost missed it. That counts. Especially that counts. And you whisper, thank you for the happiness I experienced today. You do not argue with the day. You do not dismiss what was good because it was brief. Gratitude is not about quantity. It is about awareness. When you acknowledge happiness, even in small doses, you teach your subconscious that happiness is real, accessible, and repeatable. This is how trust is built. This is how the loop closes gently, without force. There is something profoundly healing about ending the day this way. Your nervous system settles, your mind stops scanning for problems, your body prepares for rest from a place of safety instead of vigilance. Sleep becomes deeper, more restorative, because your system is no longer on alert. And as you drift off, the message continues to sink in. Happiness comes when I notice it. Happiness stays when I allow it. Over time, this simple morning invitation and evening confirmation create a rhythm. The brain begins to expect happiness, not constant pleasure, but moments of goodness. Expectation shapes perception. Perception shapes experience, and experience shapes belief. Slowly, without drama, happiness becomes familiar. It stops feeling like something you hope for and starts feeling like something you recognize. I want you to understand something very clearly here. You are not tricking yourself. You are not pretending. You are training awareness. You are choosing where your attention rests. Attention is creative. Where it goes, energy follows. And where energy flows, life responds. This is not magical thinking. This is conscious living. If some nights you struggle to find even one happy moment, be kind with yourself. This practice is not about proving anything. It is about staying open, even noticing that you survived the day. Even noticing a single breath of relief is enough. Happiness does not withdraw because you struggled. It waits patiently until you are ready to see it again. As days turn into weeks, you may notice something unexpected. You begin to trust happiness, not as something that disappears the moment you relax, but as something resilient. You stop gripping life so tightly. You allow yourself to enjoy moments without scanning for what could go wrong next. This is a profound shift. It changes how you relate to everything. So tonight and tomorrow morning and the mornings after that, keep practicing this gentle ritual. Invite happiness. Confirm its arrival. Let it be simple. Let it be human. Let it be imperfect. Life does not require you to be flawless to meet you with goodness. It only asks that you be present enough to notice. And as you fall asleep, let these words settle softly within you. You are allowed to enjoy your life. You are allowed to feel good. You are allowed to recognize happiness when it appears. The more you do, the more naturally it returns, not because you forced it, but because you finally made space for it. I want to speak to you now in a way that restores something very important to you, something you may have quietly handed away without realizing it, and that is your authority over happiness. Happiness does not belong to circumstances, to timing, to other people, or to permission from the outside world. It belongs to you. And when I say that, I don't mean it as a motivational idea or a spiritual slogan. I mean it in the most practical, grounded, lived way possible. You are the one who decides whether happiness is allowed to exist in your body today. Not whether everything goes well, not whether people behave as you wish, not whether the past was fair, but whether you give yourself permission to feel good now. Many of us were taught, subtly and repeatedly, that happiness must be justified. We learn to ask, do I deserve this? Instead of asking, does this nourish me? And that single shift From deserving to nourishing is where your power lives. When you begin to understand that happiness is nourishment, not reward, something inside you relaxes. You stop postponing your joy. You stop holding your breath, waiting for life to approve of you. You begin to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. You see, happiness is not something that arrives once you have solved yourself. It is not the final chapter after all the healing is done. Happiness is part of the healing. It is the signal that tells your nervous system it is safe to soften, safe to open, safe to repair. Without happiness, or at least the allowance of it, growth becomes harsh and exhausting. With happiness, even in small doses, change becomes sustainable. This is why reclaiming your right to happiness is not selfish, irresponsible, or naive. It is intelligent. It is compassionate. It is deeply life-affirming. So many people live as if happiness must be fragile, temporary, or conditional, and that belief alone keeps it distant. They enjoy a moment, then immediately brace for loss. They laugh, then apologize internally. They relax, then feel guilty. And that constant tightening sends a message to the body that joy is dangerous. Over time, the system learns to avoid it altogether. But happiness was never the threat. The threat was the belief that happiness had to be defended. When you reclaim your power, you stop guarding joy and start inhabiting it. You allow happiness to be steady instead of stolen. Here is the truth I want you to take in gently. Happiness does not require your life to be perfect. It requires your presence. It requires your willingness to meet the moment without immediate resistance. You do not need to feel happy all the time to be empowered. You only need to stop forbidding it. The moment you stop telling yourself, I can't feel good yet, you reopen a door that may have been closed for years. And that door does not slam open dramatically. It opens quietly. It opens with relief. It opens with a sense of coming home to yourself. Power over happiness means you understand that your emotional state is not a verdict on your worth. It is information. It tells you what you need, not who you are. When sadness appears, you do not panic. When joy appears, you do not cling. You relate to both with maturity and kindness. That relationship alone changes everything. You stop being afraid of losing happiness because you know how to return to it. You stop chasing it because you know it responds to invitation, not force. Reclaiming happiness also means releasing the belief that suffering makes you noble. That belief has been passed down through generations, and it has cost us dearly. You do not become more worthy by hurting longer. You do not become more spiritual by denying pleasure. You do not help the world by withholding your joy. In fact, joy is one of the most generous energies you can bring into any space. It regulates others. It reassures. It softens. When you allow yourself to be happy, you are not abandoning anyone. You are modeling what is possible. And let me be very clear about this. You do not need to fix your past before you choose happiness. The past does not require punishment in order to be honored. You can acknowledge pain without living inside it. You can learn from suffering without letting it define your future. Happiness does not erase what happened. It changes how much power it holds over you now. That is empowerment. Choosing happiness is not denial. It is discernment. It is saying, I see what hurts, and I also see what supports me. It is choosing where your attention lives most often. Attention shapes experience. Experience shapes belief. Belief shapes identity. When you consistently orient toward happiness, even gently, your identity shifts from someone waiting for life to change into someone participating in life fully. You may notice resistance when you begin to claim happiness more consciously. Old voices may arise. Old rules may surface. Don't get your hopes up. It won't last. You're being unrealistic. These voices are not enemies. They are outdated protectors. They learned their job in a world that felt unsafe. You don't have to fight them. You simply don't have to obey them anymore. Empowerment is quiet confidence. It does not argue. It chooses. Happiness also becomes more accessible when you stop making it dramatic. You don't need constant excitement. You don't need intensity. Very often, happiness is calm. It is ease. It is the absence of tension. It is feeling okay in your own skin. When you allow yourself to recognize that as happiness, rather than dismissing it as nothing special, you expand your capacity for joy tremendously. The most empowered relationship you can have with happiness is one where you trust it. You trust that feeling good does not make you careless. You trust that joy does not weaken you. You trust that happiness can coexist with responsibility, growth, and depth. In fact, it enhances them. A regulated nervous system makes better decisions. A joyful heart has more resilience. A peaceful mind sees solutions more clearly. And here is something I want you to truly absorb. Happiness responds to clarity. When you know what happiness means to you, not what it means to others, not what it should look like, you stop missing it when it arrives. You stop overlooking it because it didn't come in the expected form. Empowerment means you define happiness for yourself and let life meet you there. You are not here to endure life. You are here to experience it. You are not meant to survive your days until some imagined future arrives. You are meant to live them. Happiness is not a luxury reserved for when everything is resolved. It is a resource that helps you navigate what is unresolved. So if there is one thing I want you to remember, let it be this. Happiness is not something you wait for permission to feel. It is something you authorize within yourself. And the moment you do, life responds not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting what has always been available to you.